This webinar concerns reducing cost of compliance and data protection. As before, I will be addressing and putting questions to our presenter at the end of this webinar, which is expected to take around about half an hour, possibly 40 minutes. There's two distinct phases to this one. We've got the compliance and data protection element that John's going to speak about, but we've also, as promised previously, got a bit of a demonstration of Kofax mobile capture, which John will also take us through. And with that, we are ready to go. So at this point, I shall now hand over to John Stinchcombe from Kofax. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, James, and thank you very much for the intro. It's good to be here. So today's agenda, we're going to run through some key challenges, then key areas of focus for today's subject, compliance and data protection. There are some interesting findings from a Kofax-sponsored AIM study, which literally hit the streets this week. So that's hot off the presses. Then I'm going to run through a summary of regulations affecting document-centric processes. The intention of this session is not to be a comprehensive analysis of regulations and best practice. We're focusing on the cost implications, but it's probably worth just to run through a summary of those. DCS are in a very good position to help advise customers on the fine detail of that, but it's outside the scope of this session today. So then it's into the real meat of it, the cost implications of compliance and data protection, and then following up with some solution areas. As James mentioned, a short demo, a live demo of mobile capture with a slant on compliance. You know, there is a compliance and data protection angle to mobile capture. A concluding remarks, and then a wrap up with any questions. So the cost of compliance and data protection is vitally important, yet it's taken for granted. So documents are evidence, they are systems of record, and they are integral to many business processes in the legal industry. So they are vitally important. It's the de facto means of formal communication, and quite rightly, the legal profession, legal services industry has taken a lot of interest in this area. Kofax and DCS, our position in the market is all about the management of inbound documents and the governance, data extraction, verification around that. So moving to a digital world is a solution to many of the compliance and data protection issues, but it does add some burden and, of course, some costs. So we're going to look at that in a bit more detail. There's an implicit emphasis on law firms as they're expected to get this area right. You know, there's no excuses for a law firm to have a breach of data protection or to have non-compliance. And so really law firms have to be squeaky clean in this area. And as I mentioned earlier, the industry as a whole invests quite heavily in document and content management, case management systems, and increasingly in imaging, capture, and automated mechanisms. The thing about law firms, though, is they operate cross-industry. So in addition to complying with their own industry regulations and best practice, they need to be cognizant of any industries they work in. So an insurance defense specialist lawyer needs to be aware of the specific regulations surrounding insurance and the regulator in that area. And then finally, had a bit of a glitch there, unstructured data presents significant challenges to those tasked with compliance and security. By its very nature, unstructured information is difficult to manage. There are a substantial number of tools out there and technologies some of which we will touch on today, but that's part of the mix. When we refer to inbound documents, of course, we're not only talking about paper, but we're also talking about digital format documents, perhaps as attachments, emails, or direct communication via web services, XML, all those areas of data exchange. So as I mentioned, there's a recent AIM study was released this week. It's available for you to download. It's actually quite interesting. And the reason I'm calling it out is that there are a couple of elements that touch on compliance. And so in the study, respondents, there are 217 of them, were asked to reference their 3 biggest drivers for content analytics in their organizations. And there are the results. If we go about halfway down, over 40% cited improving compliance in ECM, electronic content management, or enterprise content management and records management, citing that their staff are poor at classifying documents. So using a system to do that work improves overall accuracy and, of course, productivity. And then a bit further down, reducing unidentified risk in dark data, obviously a key aspect of compliance and data security. And then detecting fraud, crime, policy infringement, unacceptable use, etc. 15% cited that. That's obviously a compliance area. There's the summary again. If you take the middle one, the information, 34%, just off the middle there, 34% cited information governance as an area that they could improve in. So definitely a hot topic. So again, looking at how these have been deployed in the industry, the dark bar or dark section of each bar is the deployment, and contextual search, curation, and e-discovery has been implemented in just short of 20% of respondents' organizations, and they have over half have either implemented or have plans to implement. And so similarly, information governance, metadata generation and correction, that's the track record of where documents and data have come from. Again, about half of respondents have plans or have already implemented those solutions. Process automation, we covered this in earlier sections, but again, improved governance is one of the areas where process automation can deliver benefits. It's an overhead, as I referred to. Moving to digital adds costs in some cases. If we can automate other functions and achieve compliance at the same time, then that's a result all around. Finally, the last topic there, improved search, is one of the benefits of auto classification, as I'll touch on later. Google-style searches are not the entire answer. You need to have some structured information in order to restrict the Google-style content search. And so having auto classification and some auto indexing really improves your search capabilities, which in turn improves compliance and governance. So what are the areas of focus? Well, here's a short summary of the document-centric requirements and regulations. So we've got some overarching non-industry specific items, and I'm not wishing to teach everyone to suck eggs here, but Data Protection Act is top of the list there. That's been long in place and is very well understood across the industry. The law of best evidence applies to legal processes, and does apply in where documents are used in evidence, and so we can't ignore that. And then there's a specification from the British Standards Institute, BIS PD 0008. That's a very long-standing set of guidelines. It's very, very comprehensive, and it's something that I would always recommend organizations to purchase and consider in detail, because, as I say, it's been around for probably 15, 20 years now. It's regularly updated, very contemporary, takes account of big data, for example, cloud. It's comprehensive and is something of a standard out there. And then a non-industry specific element from HMRC. They have their own guidelines and recommendations. They need to be involved for records management and compliance. And then we've got industry specific, heavy emphasis here on financial services, not unsurprisingly, but there are pension regulations, and of course for legal conveyance standards, as well as PCI compliance, that's the storing of credit card information on documents. And so that's just a quick roundup. As I mentioned earlier, the consultants at DCS are very well placed to help you dive deeper into any of this. There's also a downloadable document from DCS, a white paper which helps you navigate this. So data protection, that's the first section really of the cost implications. How to ensure data protection? Well, an audit trail is critical. This should be generated automatically. It shouldn't be an option. It should always be running, and it should be a natural byproduct of the process of document capture and data extraction. Products like Kofax Capture and Kofax Total Agility have a very comprehensive audit trail built in. The vast majority of our customers do enable it, and they use it for all sorts of reasons, from a productivity but also from a compliance perspective. It's also very useful to embed or consider embedding some of the audit trail information into individual documents, and again that's possible with the Kofax solutions. Achieving absolute consistency and normalizing the process. Again, this is the benefit of using a well-established software package that has specific features to help compliance. Very often we're asked whether Kofax products are PD 0008 compliant. Well, actually they can never be PD 0008 compliant, because PD 0008 refers to the process of handling documents that may be used as evidence. However, Kofax solutions have capabilities that help that process. And so the correct answer is yes, Kofax can help towards compliance, help you achieve compliance with PD 0008, even though we can never actually be compliant as a product. So the important thing there is that we offer appropriate structure and a system over the process, so that we basically lock the process down. So it's very important to flag documents that require stronger legal protection. So these are things like documents relating to criminal activity or criminal records associated with an individual, health records, for example, or the obviously contentious or controversial areas, anything that's deeply personal in nature, medical records, for example, very, very important. Those have a stronger legal protection in the context of data protection. So we can use automation to recognize and redact sensitive information. I mean, at the simplest level, this could be you know, a residential address that isn't necessary to be stored long term. So we could redact that. We could redact dates. We could redact, certainly redact credit card information or bank account details quite simply. And Kofax has very extensive data location and redaction capabilities to do that. Above all, though, to achieve this, we need policy, processes, and procedures, and you then need to encapsulate those into any software solution. So the software becomes an extension of your policy, processes, and procedures, and adds value to them in terms of an audit trail and metadata. Taking that one step further, and in line with the recent AIM study, which is all about content analytics, the use of process analytics, process intelligence to identify areas of non-compliance. You can use these solutions as a sort of watchdog that sits over the top, making sure you don't step out of line. So again, highly recommended as a belt and braces approach. And frankly, when it comes to data protection, there is only one approach that works, belt and braces. Truncating paper at source can significantly reduce the problem if you're only dealing with the digital version and the original owner of the document retains the physical version. Then part of the problem is solved. You don't have to worry of managing a paper version that may belong to somebody else and a digital version. You can very easily lock down the digital version and ensure that you have this chain of custody all the way through. So from a compliance point of view, we have to make sure often in any process that documents and folders are in good order. In other words, everything's complete, the documentation set is complete, the data contained within these documents is accurate and verifiable. So we have to make sure of completeness and accuracy. And so that's a good starter for 10. Part of this is making sure that any process data is verified against back-end data, that should say, and that should read, apologies, metadata is captured automatically. Where documents require signatures, these signatures are in place and, where possible, verifiable. And a blatant sales pitch here, Kofax has a very comprehensive line of signature verification and e-signature solutions through our SignDoc solution. So that's tightly integrated into our solutions. DCS have first-hand experience of delivering those solutions. So again, if you need more information, you know where to come. And then ensuring outbound documents. So we're switching now from inbound quickly into outbound, making sure that all outbound documents contain appropriate and necessary standard paragraph terms and conditions pertaining to that particular case. All outbound documents in the past, documents were managed on a document-by-document basis, leaving it to the skill of a knowledge worker to decide what paragraphs, etc., were included. Clearly, as the volumes increase, particularly in the fixed fee area, this needs to be automated, but a lot of governance has to sit around that to ensure that critical paragraphs, terms and conditions are not missed out. So what solution areas do we have? Quick review of where Kofax sits. Our whole proposition is around joining systems of engagement at the outside with systems of record on the inside. So on the outside, systems of engagement include things like physical paperwork, faxes, scanners located at clients, web portals, mobile devices, which we'll look at in a moment, and then a whole swathe of electronic documents that may be submitted automatically through shared folders, etc., through to emails, and of course the non-digital data streams such as XML and EDI. What we do with DCS's help is we transform and simplify these business critical documents, these interactions, into normalized data, and along the way we're extracting index and metadata, which in the context of compliance and data protection means that we have to ensure that we put the safety net in place whilst we're handling this migration. So I made hard work of that explanation. I do apologize. So solution areas. Well, first, digitization. This is, Kofak's heartland, if you will. This is where we started. Image processing and image capture allows for consistent legibility and format standards to be applied across the firm. It's not just a case of scanning documents. You have to make sure that any image processing that's applied to that document is consistent throughout. So whether you're scanning on a multifunction peripheral, on a personal scanner, or a production scanner down in the basement in the post room, the image quality standard should be adhered to all the way through, as should the format of the document. Goes without saying, stating the obvious, but digital documents are significantly easier to protect and manage, including for compliance, because you don't have the physical overhead of paper, you don't have locks and keys and rooms. You have the digital equivalent, which are enterprise content management systems and document management systems. And of course, digitization enables enhanced compliance features that are inherent in document management, content management, and records management. So really that's the whole document digitization piece. I'll be touching on this in the demo with mobile in a second. And then transformation, automation, that's quite a nice little heading. Automating the transformation of documents allows us to apply very, very stringent rules across the whole piece, meaning that we can do things in an automated sense that wouldn't be practical or would be very expensive if you tried to do it using a manual approach. Also, as I mentioned earlier, it allows sensitive data to be identified, located, extracted, and where necessary, redacted. And it allows us to do unattended processing, minimal touch, which in turn reduces the opportunity for security to be compromised. So an important area which I touched on in one of the earlier sessions is the whole area of web robots. We have a solution that we call Kapow. It's a solution for automating web integration. And in a compliance and data protection area, it plays a very important role because we can make lookups against external or internal data without human intervention. So we don't have a compliance issue around the individual or groups. These systems can also roll up or collect and roll up compliance data that may be required for working in a particular industry or case. It eliminates labor, so it reduces costs dramatically, and the same system can update systems behind the scenes without human intervention. All this delivers enhanced auditing functionality, and so allows you to get to where you need to be from a compliance and data protection perspective in a much easier and cost-efficient way. But as I mentioned earlier, analytics and process intelligence, this can provide an essential watchdog over all your processes, extracting data automatically, monitoring and reporting on compliance and data protection breaches if that's the way you want to look at it, or compliance from another perspective. But it also allows you to produce near real-time reporting, which might be useful in an audit or compliance review session. So we're on to the mobile demo or mobile capture demo. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen with you, and hopefully through the wonders of technology this should work. So now you can see my screen. That is my cell phone, my smartphone. It's an Apple, as everyone can see, and I'm on the Vodafone UK network. It's 10:32, and without any more ado, I'm going to navigate to the Kofax demo app. And the first thing it does, it shows you what I'm seeing, which is my water and my coffee and my watch. So I've got a document which I prepared earlier. It's a real-life document, and you can see now that I'm hovering over it. What you can't see is that I'm not touching any buttons. And so when it gets close enough to take a picture, I will attempt to hold it still. The system decides when it's going to actually capture the image, and we can see there that it's done it. That quick dialogue was to say that we're rendering that color image, that high-resolution color image from my iPhone, into a bitonal document. We've configured this app so that we can see it working behind the scenes. This is not necessarily how a user of this app would use the app. And so for the purposes of demo, I can actually zoom in to see what this document is about. It's an invoice from Germany. It's for Nick Scarf of Neopost. It's not the perfect image, but I think given the technical glitches we've just had, I'm going to stick with it. By hitting the tick button, I've now rendered it into a bitonal image, highly legible, and very, very small in size. So this is analogous to a document that has come off of an MFP or a production scanner in your post room. That makes it very, very network friendly. If I accept it and then finish, there's my watch there. You can see that the file size is 60 kilobytes. It's a TIFF. It's actually 2 pages. I actually took 2 pages. I do apologize. Each one 34 kilobytes or thereabouts at 300 dots per inch. So you got 2 for the price of 1 there. Neatly cropped, ready to go. The way I've set this particular demo app is to submit the document to email. So I can send that to Nick Scarf, and off it goes. So a little bit about this this demo app. Again, this is not the sort of app that would fall into the hands of an end user. It's been developed specifically to show off some of the features, and I can show you that now. I'm going to go down to VRS settings. Anyone that is familiar with the Kofax lineup will know that VRS is our patented image perfection software. It's been around for about 15 years on production scanners. It's been enhanced over that time. And what we did about 3 or 4 years ago was implement it as an Android and iOS toolkit. And so app developers are now able to take advantage of the very extensive image processing and cleanup options that are available under VRS. And you can see that we have things like blur detection, saturation detection, a very wide range of functions. We can search for mica, that's machine readable strips on checks. We can set a file size or document size. We can set DPI. All the things that I was mentioning about earlier that are needed for normalizing documents and compliance. So RTTI, I'll just touch on that. This is a way of enabling near real-time analysis of data contained on the document. So if in a conveyancing scenario or a probate scenario or a claim scenario, you've asked for a driver's license or proof of ID, behind the scenes we can extract the information whilst the user is still live with the app in their hand. We can verify that information and give them some instant feedback. We call that real-time transformation interface, RTTI for short, and you know, it's one of the things that really sets Kofax apart from our competitors. So that's the demo over and done with. This is the interesting bit where I have to flip back to presentation. Okay, and we're now into the final part, which is the concluding remarks. Again, as a conclusion, what Kofax and DCS do is we take documents from systems of engagement, which I've already described. We transform, simplify these documents and interactions, extracting information, pushing them into systems of record. So these are not nice to have features, these are essential for compliance and data security in a high volume or even a medium volume scenario. You have to adopt a systematic approach. Compliance and regulation is a moving feast, and so it's absolutely critical that you have a systematic approach that is backed up with established software applications that deliver in a very wide range of applications. Costs can be controlled if the right tools and systems are considered as a part of the overall strategy. It's very difficult to do this manually, particularly in a high volume scenario. It's also good to know that if you have an analytics tool that is acting as a watchdog from a compliance and data protection perspective, you can be sure that the business is aware of any breaches very, very early on. And then many compliance and data protection elements are implemented on the back of productivity and document data management initiatives. So, you know, these are often byproducts of productivity enhancements, and so can be considered as a part of the overall solution. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that may have been submitted. Any questions, James?
Yes, indeed, John. Just one, and this award for awkward question goes to this one, I think. Okay. Nice demo, it says, but is there not an increased compliance risk associated with mobile capture?
Let me have a quick think about it. Well, yes, I can see where they're coming from on that. Yeah, mobile capture, everyone thinks of apps, and you know, when you think of apps, there's the ubiquitous Facebook app and your email, and you know, people download apps all the time, and the last thing you'd want is perhaps details of your impending house move as part of your mortgage pack, your proof of earnings that you've snapped in a mobile capture app to land up on your Facebook page. You know, it would be a nightmare. So that's why we deliver our mobile capture solution as an SDK. The whole idea is that it's embedded into a custom app, and the documents we capture are never shared outside of that app. And so there's best practice around that, but basically the documents are never stored in the camera roll. They're never stored in folders where one would expect to find images. They're stored within the application space, within the app itself. We don't use email, even though the example I showed of sharing the document was email. Typically, there's a point-to-point connection, an HTTPS connection between the app and the server. The server is hosted at the law firm. So again, no hacking of email, no teenagers in the house knowing parents' email addresses and having a look at the sent box. None of that. The data goes straight from the app, straight out to the law firm, and it's done. I hope that answers the question.
Super, thanks very much indeed, John. There will no doubt be questions further along down the line. By now, of course, you know how to get in touch with us. It's probably still on your screens as we speak. So it just remains for me really to thank John Stinchcombe very much for giving up the time to look at legal sector document requirements from a scanning and capture perspective. Thank you all also to attendees, and wishing you a very good rest of the day.